The House will please come to order. Members, please take their seats. Sergeant at Arms.
The House is now in session.
The members will please rise and be led in prayer by the Reverend Joseph N. Waddy, Director of Ministries, St. Peter Baptist Church, Glen Allen, and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, led by the delegate from Alexandria, Delegate Herring.
Let us pray. To the one who gives us life, the majestic beauty of our state reminds us that you are the source of all blessings. At the beginning of this new year and of this legislative session this morning, we humbly ask for your blessing on our legislators and on all who collaborate in their work. Bestow on them an abundant share of your wisdom and a deep desire to serve the common good. May they be bridge builders, helping us to strengthen those bonds that unite a truly diverse population, encouraging us to honor the innate dignity of each human person, and inspiring us to respect the differences in culture and experience that is the fabric of the Commonwealth of Virginia. May they be wise stewards of many resources, human, natural, and economic, with which you have so richly blessed us. May they help us to restore the honor and dignity of the great tradition of public service that has long distinguished our Commonwealth, and may they and their families be given a glimpse of the fruits that flow from their sacrifices as they dedicate themselves in pursuing the common good over self-interest. We ask all of these things of you, trusting that you are indeed the source of all that is good. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The members will please answer the roll call by indicating their presence on their electronic voting device. Madam Clerk.
Delegate Adams, DM.
Present.
Delegate Adams is present. Delegate Brewer. Delegate Byron.
Present.
Delegate Byron is present. Delegate Ferris.
Present.
Delegate Ferris is present. Delegate Freitas.
Present.
Delegate Freitas is present. Delegate Guzman.
Present.
Delegate Guzman is present. Delegate Hudson. Delegate Jenkins.
Present.
Delegate Jenkins is present. Delegate Mullen. Delegate Robinson. Delegate Sumaira.
Present.
Delegate Sumaira is present. Delegate Simon.
Present.
Delegate Simon is present. Delegate Sullivan.
Here.
Delegate Sullivan is present. Delegate Torian.
Present.
Delegate Torian is present. Madam Speaker, a quorum is present.
Pursuant to House Rule 3, I have examined and approved the journal for the House of Delegates for Thursday, February 4th, 2021. Motions and resolutions under Rule 39 pursuant to Rule 40 are now in order. The clerk will please announce the first morning hour order of business and any clerk's announcements and communications.
First morning hour order of business. A few announcements first. Please mute your mics unless you're speaking. Please turn on your camera so that we can see you when you're speaking. And the call-in number for technology issues is 804-698-1560. Madam Speaker, we have a communication from the governor. The proclamation In accordance with the provisions of Article 4, Section 6, and Article 5, Section 5 of the Constitution of Virginia, and the powers thereby vested in the governor to call a special session of the General Assembly, I, Ralph S. Northam, Governor of Virginia, do hereby summon the members of the Senate and the House of Delegates constituting the General Assembly of Virginia to meet in special session commencing the 10th day of February 2021 for the purpose of continuing the work of the 2021 regular session of the General Assembly. Given under my hand as Governor of Virginia and under the lesser seal of the Commonwealth at Richmond this 4th day of February 2021 and in the 245th year of the Commonwealth. Signed, Ralph S. Northam, Governor of Virginia. Attested by Kelly Thomason, Secretary of the Commonwealth. Madam Speaker, for member requests to speak, you are requested to use your request to speak buttons on your voting devices.
The delegate from Enrico, Delegate Van Valkenburg.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise for introduction.
Delegate Van Valkenburg, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, members of the body, I'd like you to introduce you all to Reverend Joseph Waddy of St. Peter's Baptist Church in Glen Allen, Virginia. Reverend Waddy is a native of Richmond. He graduated from Armstrong High School in Richmond City. He has more degrees than I'm going to list because he'd put you all to shame and you'd all feel bad for yourselves. Needless to say, he's a very learned man. But most importantly, he was licensed and ordained to preach at the First Baptist Church in South Richmond. We're glad he jumped the river and came over to Glen Allen, where he is, helps serve a wonderful congregation who is just filled with wonderful souls. And I can't speak highly enough of the work they do for Glen Allen and the work they do for Henrico County. It's they're truly a blessing. And one of the real bummers of the last year has not been able to periodically stop by and see them on Sunday morning. And so hopefully that those days are soon at an end. But I hope you all would give him a warm house welcome.
Thank you very much, Delegate Van Valkenburg, and welcome, Reverend Waddy. Thank you so much for joining us. We too are thrilled that you jumped the river to Glen Allen, and thanks for what you do every day in the community, and thanks for inspiring us this morning.
Thank you very much. Amen. Thank you.
Madam Clerk.
Madam Speaker, I'll call the names of those delegates who I did not see voting present. Delegate Brewer.
Present.
Delegate Brewer is present. Delegate Hudson.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Pursuant to House Rule 30, the Journal shall reflect that the following members are away on pressing personal business and are granted leave from today's session. Delegate Hudson. The clerk will please announce the next order of business.
Second morning hour order of business. The next order of business is the announcement of member requests to move legislation from any uncontested to regular calendar. Today, on page 2, House Bill 2078, Patron Delegate Marshall will move to the regular calendar.
The clerk will please announce the next order of business.
Third morning hour order of business. The next order of business is the announcement of requests by members for legislation to go by for the day, and there are no such requests today.
Will the clerk please call the next order of business?
Fourth morning hour order of business. The next order of business is recognition of member requests for points of personal privilege, and the Speaker requests members to use their request to speak button on their voting devices.
The delegate from Prince William, Delegate Munden King.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise for a point of personal privilege.
Delegate Munden King, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Today across America in legislative bodies, corporations, schools, and cities, men and women are observing National Wear Red Day. And I must say, as I look at the screen, there is not another group that looks as good as this one. So thank you, thank you, thank you. By wearing red, we all have taken part in raising awareness of heart disease and the need to improve women's heart health. Cardiovascular disease is the #1 killer of women. It claims more women's lives than all forms of cancer combined. The American Heart Association recently noted an alarming decline in awareness that cardiovascular disease is the #1 killer of women. And too many women, particularly our youngest, most diverse women, remain unaware. The American Heart Association's Go Red for Women movement is issuing an urgent call to raise awareness about the #1 killer for women in the U.S. So all of those beautiful red ties, blazers, socks, and even handbags are all simple ways to make a powerful statement. And I see a cup there as well. So to my colleagues, thank you for showing your support today by wearing red. Please go to your social media and tag at American Heart VA and hashtag #GoRedVA. Thank you so much, Madam Speaker.
Thank you so much, Delegate Munden King, for bringing that to our attention. And as you said, we're not in person. It's always great to see the masses of red, but you know what? We can still see it virtually. So it's wonderful, and we'll definitely go to the website as well. Thanks for bringing it to our attention again. The delegate from Petersburg, Delegate Aird.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise for a point of personal privilege.
Delegate Aird, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker and members of the body, as we continue our reflections during this month of Black history, our shared American history, I ask you to imagine what the future of our Commonwealth will look like 20 years from now. By then, this body will be filled with new leaders, new faces, and hopefully continued energy to bring about change. Imagine with me the issues of the day that will be debated, Madam Speaker. Will they still be fighting for adequate funding for our schools, especially those in impoverished communities among a division of segregated school division lines? Will they still be trying to correct policies in our criminal justice system that disproportionately negatively impacts Black and Brown Virginians? Or will they still be debating policies that aim to eliminate the perpetual bias that exists in our healthcare system? Madam Speaker, this is my greatest fear. As a mom of 2 young boys, and I mean, even if you're a grandparent, an aunt, an uncle, you name it, the fear that future generations will still be fighting the same battles of today is a real one, especially for Black and Brown Virginians. As I look back at the issues of the day well before my time in the 1960s and 70s and so forth, I continue to see remnants of the battles that plagued them, plague us, with very little change despite the sacrifices of so many people. The leaders of that time were arguing about our schools. They were arguing about affordable housing, and they were arguing about economic opportunities and equitable access and unjust treatment under the law. Ultimately, they were crying out about the racism that is embedded as normal practice within our society that has led to such issues as discrimination in our criminal justice system, employment, housing, healthcare. Plain and simple, here in our Commonwealth, institutional racism runs rampant, and they were crying out against it. But Madam Speaker, racism, it no longer looks like overt oppression and criminal racist violence. It doesn't look like someone calling me a nigger. It doesn't look like a cross burning on my lawn. It looks very different today, and there are so many proxies for it. And this is exactly why we have to be more vigilant in these times than ever before to combat it. Combat it in our systems and in our institutions. Madam Speaker, we find ourselves in the current state of our society today because we still cannot have a real conversation about systemic racism. Too often, this discussion is internalized and received as a personal attack. And before the conversation can even begin, people shut down. They get defensive. and their discomfort clouds their vision. But we must all realize that even though the familiar signs and symbols of racism of the past have faded into the distance, racism must certainly persist all around us. The Black experience in our nation and in our Commonwealth now involves a deep system and complex form of oppression, the specter of systemic racism. At every turn, every corner, through every structure and every system, we have structures that have been thoughtfully designed around the continued exclusion and oppression of Black communities. From classrooms to courtrooms, Black Americans move through society with an entirely different set of rules and different set of mandates and a different and more severe set of consequences. So, Madam Speaker, if we don't get comfortable with having this conversation, we will be doomed to live through these same ills over and over and over again. We must unify and we must rise to this challenge. Otherwise, we are destined to relive the same debates with the same inadequate outcomes. Madam Speaker, celebrating Black history means celebrating the countless Black men and women and children, both famous and forgotten, whose tremendous sacrifices enable people who look like me to be in this body. But we can do a little more than celebrate, because these sacrifices will have meant nothing if we do not rise to the challenges of today, which means rebuilding and strengthening our systems of government that are proving to continue to work against Black and Brown Virginians. To truly honor Black history, we must get comfortable with confronting the racism in every system and institution that we have to finally and formally excise it from our society. You cannot celebrate Black history if you cannot summon the moral fights for Black Virginians and Black Virginians' futures. As we continue the work of this session, I ask that you join me in please remembering this reflection during the month of Black history, my history, your history, our shared American history. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you so much, Delegate Aird. Does any other member have any announcements or introductions or motions? If not, will the clerk please call the calendar?
House calendar for February 5th. House bills on third reading, uncontested calendar. Page 1, House Bill 2024. Page 2, House Bill 2219. On page 2, House Bill 2078 has moved to the regular calendar. Page 3, House Bill 2167, House Bill 2185. Page 4, House Bill 2194, House Bill 2311, House Bill 2314. Page 5, House Bill 2316, House Bill 2317, House Bill 2337.
Shall the bills pass? Madam Clerk.
Delegate Avoli.
Gary.
Delegate Avoli votes aye. Delegate Brewer.
Aye.
Delegate Brewer votes aye. Delegate Guzman.
Aye.
Delegate Guzman votes aye. Delegate Torian.
Aye.
Delegate Torian votes aye.
The clerk will please close the roll.
Ayes 100, nays 0, abstentions 0.
Ayes 100, nays 0, abstentions 0. The bills are passed.
House bills on third reading, regular calendar. Page 6, House Bill 2003. A bill to amend and reenact Section 59.1, 200 of the Code of Virginia relating to the Consumer Protection Act, prohibited practices, certain advertising related to school quality.
The delegate from Washington, Delegate Wampler.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to speak to the bill.
Delegate Wampler, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, I've been ill this week, so I missed a lot of the debate on this bill as it came through. Just wanted to speak to it briefly before the final vote today. this bill offered by the delegate from Fairfax, in my opinion, just on the plain reading, without hearing any debate on the bill, in my opinion, is a restriction on free speech. You know, you look at guardrails in our system and what is set out, what we're supposed to legislate on and what we're not supposed to legislate on. Just to be clear, the Constitution, and particularly the Bill of Rights in Virginia, Article 1, Section 12, says that the freedoms of speech and the freedom of press are among the great bulwarks of liberty and can never be restrained except by despotic governments. That any citizen may freely speak, write, and publish his sentiments on all subjects. The General Assembly shall not pass any law abridging the freedom of speech or press. What this bill does, very plainly, is set out to restrict speech, advertising, relating to school quality. On that ground alone, every member of this body ought to vote no today on final passage on this bill. Outside of that, Madam Speaker, members, this bill, you've got to ask yourselves why the attention and why the restriction on speech relating to school quality at this time. I think it underscores that we have some major issues addressing educational quality. In other parts of Virginia's Constitution, we're required to offer a high quality education to every Virginian. And it is obvious that in the last 12 months, we've had major issues in that regard. Whether it's broadband or instructional quality or, Department of Education's approach to handling the pandemic, we've got some major problems. And so I think it's peculiar that there is an attempt to restrict speech only to state-sponsored, state-approved speech as set out by the Department of Education under this bill. I hope that every member votes no on House Bill 2003 today for those reasons. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Delegate Wampler. The delegate from Newport News, Delegate Mullen.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, speaking to the bill.
Delegate Mullen, you have the floor.
Madam Speaker, this is now a bill that just asks the Attorney General's office and the Department of Education and all those else who are involved to help come up with advertising regulations. I understand that we have a great deal of melodrama in this body, but this is a very small bill. That also, by the way, has an enactment clause on it. If we're going to start screaming that the sky is falling over something like this, it diminishes the ability of members and of this body to be able to have a true and honest conversation about other issues. If everything is a forest fire, then nothing is. My goodness, this is a tiny bill. I hope it will be the pleasure of the body to pass this legislation.
Shall the bill pass? Madam Clerk.
Delegate Bagby has voted. Delegate Brewer. Delegate LaRock.
The clerk will please close the roll.
Ayes 55, nays 44, abstentions 0.
Ayes 55, nays 44, abstentions 0. The bill passes.
Page 6, House Bill 1935, a bill to amend and reenact sections 58.1, 301, and other sections of the Code of Virginia relating to conformity of the Commonwealth's tax system with the Internal Revenue Code.
The delegate from Colonial Heights, Delegate Cox.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to speak to the bill.
Delegate Cox, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I think a lot of you know that I've had, and I say the privilege of being on appropriations for 20 years, and I'm really keenly aware having done that and worked with the Finance Committee, how their policies affect our budget. And a lot of people say on paper this is a pretty complex issue, but I really don't think it is. I think it's one that should be all about helping small business. We all know how tough of a year it's been for small business. So many have been forced to close. I think I've read some statistics where it's up to 1/4. And they really have taken all kinds of steps to ensure and let me emphasize this, their employees were paid. Because I think for so many of them, it's all about providing health insurance for their employees, paying them, and make sure their workplaces are safe. And probably over 113 businesses, I think if you read, have taken out some form of PPP loans. And a lot of people need to understand those loans were not a windfall. They didn't line their pockets with those loans. They used their loans to keep their workers, and I'm going to say once again, their workers employed. The federal government recognized this. These are not normal times. And to help out all small businesses, they weren't going to stick to the normal tax policy of just allowing the exclusion of income when it's a forgiven loan. And I think Virginia needs to do exactly the same thing. Some people would argue, which I think is ironic, it's too rich of a benefit for business. I would strongly disagree. Given everything the business has been through, I would much rather give the benefit to business than to state government. And look, we all know Virginia is a conformity state. We have arguments about that all the time and the necessity to quickly pass these types of bills. And businesses make their decisions last year and almost every year expecting us to conform to federal policy. So make no mistake, Virginia will be taxing our small businesses more than they anticipated. They presumed Virginia would give them the same tax benefits that the federal government gave them. If they're not allowed to fully deduct their business expenses, they will pay more in state taxes than they expected. And I think all of us have a lot of examples of this. I talked to a very civic-minded small business woman owner in my district, and she's not the only one. She tells me she employs 28 people, pretty significant, and she used her entire payroll, her entire loan on payroll. She was able to keep all of her employees with no pay cuts and reductions in health insurance. And now she tells me with this bill, she could take a $20,000 hit if she can't deduct her full expenses. And that's the reality of where so many of our small businesses are. Now, from what I hear, and hopefully I'll finally get to see what the budget looks like on Sunday, but from what I hear, Virginia is doing better than expected financially. And that's a good thing. Judging by some of the proposals that we've seen come across this floor, some of them in the 6 and 7 figure range, I gather things are okay financially. So the question is simple. Are we going to decide how to spend this money? Are we going to let businesses do with it what they planned on, which is keeping their people employed? For those reasons, Madam Speaker, I oppose the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Cox. The delegate from Fairfax, Chairwoman Watts.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. There are a lot of misunderstandings about what is before us. And I'm going to start with, and I'm sure I'm going to repeat it at least twice, 3 times, that what the House version, the Senate version, what Virginia does will be exactly the same as the federal government as far as the treatment of the payroll protection program money that was received. This is not taxable. It will not be taxable. If you're comparing what this body does with the body at the normally at the other end of the hall, we are exactly the same. And I again and again and again get emails from small businesses as well as associations representing those businesses that are raising this concern, and it's partly because of the complexity of the code, that you're not going to see it in bright letters in the letter of HB 1935, because you start with your federal adjusted gross income, and that's what Virginia taxes are based on. We are not taxing money that businesses received that they expected wouldn't be taxed. The only change we're talking about is what happened in December of 27th, about 5 weeks ago. So the full year that businesses have been planning, nothing changes under Virginia taxes with this bill. Now let's talk about this bill and what the emphasis is in the House approach. The emphasis is on small businesses, those that we believe need the help the most. We are not extending the issue of whether or not you can deduct money that is paid for by the federal money. We're not talking about that for the corporations. We're talking about those small businesses, those partnerships, sole proprietors, LLCs, S-corps, pass-through entities. There's a number, but many businesses file under the Virginia individual income tax, not the corporate income tax. And that is what this bill is directed to. And 56% of these unincorporated businesses who received the payroll protection money only got $25,000 or less. So they will be able to deduct all of the money that they qualified for this payroll protection federal assistance with. All. Meanwhile, all of the other unincorporated businesses who received funds through the PPP will get $25,000 in a deduction. So all unincorporated businesses will benefit, and those that receive $25,000 or less will get a total deduction. I guess at this point, I'm still, once again, I keep on coming back to saying we are not at all touching the tax-free money received from the federal government. Please understand that, since it pains me as I get email after email that is alarmed about this, and it simply is not part of the bill. So what we essentially have then in the House bill is $38 million additional to what the almost $100 million that we're giving to individuals and to special provisions that benefit restaurants and landlords. In addition to that almost $126 million, we're giving an additional $38 million to small business because of the action of the House yesterday to amend the bill. The Senate is giving $130 million to all businesses, the biggest corporations who receive PPP money down to our target, the mom and pop, yes, the CPA office, yes, the law office, all of the small businesses who qualified and helped keep people employed through the payroll expenses. So with that differential, I would address you to the issue, and I was so really pleased to hear the gentleman from Colonial Heights speak to the issue, because he knows well from his years on appropriations of all of the ways that appropriations works to target the spending of Virginia's resources where they can do the most good. And one of the most important aspects of that has been the Rebuild Virginia target this last year on businesses who didn't get PPP money, but over $120 million has been given in grants up to $100,000 to many other businesses throughout the Commonwealth. This is the initiative where we can really target where the help is needed most to keep these businesses afloat. But I would inform you that there are currently applications representing a demand of approximately $175 million for additional funding to help additional businesses with this targeted help to where it will do the most good. In addition, as we're talking business issues, I particularly have to point out the challenge for all businesses that is represented by the unemployment insurance payments that have had to be made to keep families and individuals afloat during COVID. But with all of that payout in unemployment insurance, our unemployment insurance funds needs to be replenished. And we have a choice. We can take it solely out of businesses' expenses and say, you business, you're on your own. No, we wouldn't do that for a moment. We are in fact targeting money to make sure that we can do everything we can to help businesses in this way by bringing greater soundness back to the unemployment insurance fund. Let me conclude by saying again that this money isn't free money. Many, many people have been hurt by COVID. Many people are continuing to suffer. And one of the biggest things is opening our schools safely, in addition to the mental health problems that are surfacing, the healthcare pressure that we're seeing. These and many more are serious problems of COVID that the House version is also very cognizant of as we target the spending under this bill to small businesses and make sure that we can also help all who are suffering by COVID so that our economy can rebound, not only with healthy businesses, but with consumers coming in the door. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Delegate Watts. The delegate from Roanoke, Delegate McNamara.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Speaking to the bill.
Delegate McNamara, you have the floor.
Thank you. Well, I agree with everything we've heard before. There is one little bit of a distinction I did want to share relative to this bill. Well, I can agree that technically the income is not being taxed that comes from the PPP loans by the very nature that the expenses that are being paid for by that income not being deductible has the same effective result as if the income had been taxed. So I would take a little bit of exception to that. And the other thing, speaking to the bill, Madam Speaker, Virginia is in a very, very strong financial position. We've heard, I think it was actually mentioned, we're about 7.8% ahead of last year's revenue stream for the first half of the fiscal year we're in. My suggestion, Madam Speaker, is part of that increase is because of the federal stimulus that was put into our economy. Part of the reason we are in the revenue position that exists is because of these many small businesses that went out of their way to keep their employees employed, to keep their health care benefits, to allow these people to receive paychecks, to put money into the economy. I would suggest that is a factor in the revenue reports that we're seeing as a Commonwealth of Virginia. So I think it's perfectly appropriate. And well, I can certainly agree with an emphasis on the small business. We have, and I think the Senate has reached a reasonable compromise, but this bill doesn't help the small businesses. This helps the micro businesses. $25,000 at a 2.5-month payroll is $120,000 payroll. That's not a small business. That's a one-person business. And this, I think, is just wholly inadequate what we can do as a body to keep our businesses afloat, keep them paying their employees, and get our economy moving without the fiscal stimulus that can't continue forever. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Delegate McNamara. The delegate from Fairfax, Delegate Watts.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I realize on third reading that this is making statements rather than debating the bill. Nevertheless, because of the importance to all who are following this issue so closely, I must correct what was just articulated about whether something that is tax-free is then somehow, if you're taxing what you spend it on, is somehow you're still taxing it. It's tax-free. It doesn't count as part of your income. Perhaps some of you do your own taxes like I always have over the years, just because, by God, if I'm going to legislate on it, I'm supposed to understand it. And if you do, let me give you this example. The per diem that we talk about that we get during session to pay for the hotel room and meals, or that any person gets, is not counted as income because we don't have to account for each and every expense. It is okay if you received X amount a day, it is assumed that you have spent it since you're not living at home. And that's the way it's always been. And no one has ever said that we should be able to take that hotel room as an expense off our taxes. But that is what's being implied today. And it's just not the way that tax policy has been shaped and is shaped. And it's really does a disservice to business to make this image that somehow, because we're taxing what they paid for in untaxed, because we're saying that you can't, I'm sorry, I've just said it wrong, because we're saying you can't take a deduction for what you paid for with someone else's money on that specific expense. You can take every other deduction related to it, but if that item was paid for by the federal money, you can't also then take it as something that you paid for out of your own pocket. You paid for it out of the federal money, totally untaxed. And that's the fairness issue of the way in which this is shaped. As we try to lay that aside and refocus as we need to on who has been hurt most by COVID, I believe that it's the 70% of business taxpayers who pay as individuals, and we are helping all of them, and more than half of them we are getting a full extra benefit of being able to deduct something paid for by the federal government. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The delegate from Enrico, Delegate Willett.
Madam Speaker, speaking to the bill.
Delegate Willett, you have the floor.
Madam Speaker, I cannot begin to articulate as well as the Madam Chairwoman has the intricacies and the relationships of this bill and what we're trying to accomplish. I can sit here, though, as a small business entrepreneur, and I ran on the small business platform, and I can assure you that this bill and the Chairwoman, as she's expressed, absolutely has the best intentions in mind for small business. It's an excellent attempt to try to help those who are particularly in need during this time. And as everyone Republicans and Democrats alike have articulated today, this COVID pandemic has had an unfortunately harshest impact on small businesses. This will help, and I hope everyone can support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Willett. The delegate from Arlington, Delegate Lopez.
Madam Speaker, I have a motion.
Delegate Lopez, you have the floor.
Madam Speaker, I move the pending question.
Delegate Lopez moves the pending question. All those in favor shall say aye.
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 All those opposed, the pending question is called. Shall the bill pass? Madam Clerk.
Delegate Ferris. Delegate Fowler.
The clerk will please close the roll.
Ayes 55, nays 43, abstentions 0.
Ayes 55, nays 43, abstentions 0. The bill passes.
Page 7, House Bill 2332, a bill to amend and reenact Sections 38.2, 4214, and 38.2, 4319 of the Code of Virginia, and change other sections of the code relating to the Commonwealth Health Reinsurance Program established, special fund established, assessment, federal waiver application.
The delegate from Fairfax, Delegate Sickles. Shall the bill pass? Madam Clerk.
Delegate Adams has voted. Delegate Ayala. Delegate Fowler. Delegate Guzman.
The clerk will please close the roll.
Ayes 59, nays 39, abstentions 0.
Ayes 59, nays 39, abstentions 0. The bill passes.
House Bill 1914, a bill to amend and reenact Section 56585.1 of the Code of Virginia relating to electric utilities, triennial review, period costs, rate reductions.
The delegate from Fairfax, shall the bill pass? Madam Clerk.
Delegate Avoli.
No.
Delegate Avoli votes nay. Delegate Fowler. Delegate Torian has voted.
The clerk will please close the roll.
Ayes 60, nays 39, abstentions 0.
Ayes 60, nays 39, abstentions 0. The bill passes.
Page 8, House Bill 1984, a bill to authorize the State Corporation Commission in triennial review proceedings for a Phase 2 utility to determine fair rates of return on common equity for the utility's generation and distribution services and to order increases or decreases to the utility's rates for generation and distribution.
Shall the bill pass? Madam Clerk.
Delegate Fowler. Delegate McQuinn.
The clerk will please close the roll.
Ayes 64, nays 35, abstentions 0.
Ayes 64, nays 35, abstentions 0. The bill passes.
House Bill 2014, a bill to amend and reenact Sections 36, 139, and 55.1-1250 of the Code of Virginia relating to the Virginia Residential Landlord and Tenant Act, landlord remedies, landlord's acceptance of rent with reservation, tenant's right of redemption.
Shall the bill pass? Madam Clerk.
Delegate Avoli. Delegate Fowler. Delegate Simon has voted.
The clerk will please close the roll.
Ayes 56, nays 42, abstentions 0.
Ayes 56, nays 42, abstentions 0. The bill passes.
House Bill 2048, a bill to amend and reenact Section 56577 of the Code of Virginia relating to electric utility regulation, purchasing from competitive suppliers.
Shall the bill pass? Madam Clerk.
Delegate Edmonds has voted. Delegate Fowler. Delegate Wiley has voted.
The clerk will please close the roll.
Ayes 67, nays 32, abstentions 0.
Ayes 67, nays 32, abstentions 0. The bill passes.
Page 9, House Bill 2049, a bill to amend and reenact Section 56585.1 of the Code of Virginia relating to electric utilities, customer credit reinvestment offsets.
Shall the bill pass? Madam Clerk.
Delegate Avoli.
Nay.
Delegate Avoli votes nay. Delegate Fowler. Delegate Guzman.
Yay.
Delegate Guzman votes aye. Delegate Hodges.
Nay.
Delegate Hodges votes nay. Delegate Levine has voted.
The clerk will please close the roll.
Ayes 56, nays 44, abstentions 0.
Ayes 56, nays 44, abstention 0. The bill passes.
House Bill 2160, a bill to amend and reenact Section 56585.1 of the Code of Virginia relating to electric utilities, triennial review, fair rate of return, customer bill credits.
Shall the bill pass? Madam Clerk.
Delegate Avoli.
Nay.
Delegate Avoli votes nay. Delegate Carr has voted. Delegate Fowler has voted.
The clerk will please close the roll.
Ayes 62, nays 38, abstentions 0.
Ayes 62, nays 38, abstentions 0. The bill passes.
House Bill 2175, a bill to amend and reenact Sections 8.01, 463, and other sections of the Code of Virginia relating to housing protections, foreclosures, manufactured housing.
Shall the bill pass? Madam Clerk.
Delegate Avoli has voted. Delegate Bourne.
Yes.
Delegate Bourne votes aye. Delegate Plum.
Aye.
Delegate Plum votes aye. Delegate Runyon has voted.
The clerk will please close the roll.
Ayes 60, nays 40, abstentions 0.
Ayes 60, nays 40, abstention 0. The bill passes.
Page 10, House Bill 2200, a bill to amend and reenact Section 56585.1 of the Code of Virginia relating to electric utilities, triennial review.
Then I don't understand.
Shall the bill pass?
So nay.
Madam Clerk.
Delegate Austin has voted. Delegate Jenkins has voted. Delegate McQuinn has voted. Delegate Simon.
Yes.
Delegate Simon votes aye.
The clerk will please close the roll.
Ayes 63, nays 37, abstentions 0.
Ayes 63, nays 37, abstention 0. The bill passes.
House Bill 2227, a bill to direct the Board of Housing and Community Development to consider adopting amendments to the Uniform Statewide Building Code relating to energy efficiency and conservation upon each publication of a new version of the International Code Council's International Energy Conservation Code.
Shall the bill pass? Madam Clerk.
Delegate all votes are taken.
The clerk will please close the roll.
Ayes 55, nays 45, abstentions 0.
Ayes 55, nays 45, abstentions 0. The bill passes.
House Bill 2313, a bill to amend and reenact Section 2.23705.7 of the Code of Virginia relating to Freedom of Information Act, exclusions, definition of Office of the Governor.
Shall the bill pass?
I'll correct Linda's.
Madam Clerk.
When I get there.
Delegate Avoli. Delegate Bourne has voted.
The clerk will please close the roll.
Ayes 54, nays 45, abstentions 0.
Ayes 54, nays 45, abstentions 0. The bill passes.
Page 11, House Bill 2320, a bill to amend and reenact Section 55.1703 of the Code of Virginia and to amend the code by adding a section numbered 55.1708.2 relating to property, required disclosures for buyer to exercise due diligence, flood risk report.
Shall the bill pass? Madam Clerk.
Delegate Cole, ML.
The clerk will please close the roll.
Ayes 88, nays 11, abstentions 0.
Ayes 88, nays 11, abstentions 0. The bill passes.
House Bill 2327, a bill to amend and reenact Section 2.24321.3 of the Code of Virginia relating to the Virginia Public Procurement Act, payment of prevailing wage, transportation infrastructure projects.
Shall the bill pass? Madam Clerk.
Delegate Cole, ML.
Delegate Cole votes nay.
Delegate Cole votes nay. Delegate Converse Fowler has voted.
The clerk will please close the roll.
Ayes 55, nays 45, abstentions 0.
Ayes 55, nays 45, abstentions 0. The bill passes.
House Bill 2308, a bill to amend and reenact Section 5720 of the Code of Virginia relating to religious and charitable matters, quantity of land certain associations may hold.
Shall the bill pass? Madam Clerk.
Delegate Cole, ML.
Delegate Cole votes yes.
Delegate Cole votes aye. Delegate Herring.
Delegate Herring votes aye.
Delegate Herring votes aye.
The clerk will please close the roll.
Ayes 98, nays 2, abstentions 0.
Ayes 98, nays 2, abstentions 0. The bill passes.
Page 12, House Bill 1827, a bill to amend and reenact Section 22.1 through 9 of the Code of Virginia relating to the Board of Education, membership, geographic representation.
Shall the bill pass? Madam Clerk.
Delegate Hudson has voted.
The clerk will please close the roll.
Ayes 100, nays 0, abstentions 0.
Ayes 100, nays 0, abstention 0. The bill passes.
House Bill 1979, a bill to amend the Code of Virginia by adding in Title 67 a chapter numbered 18, consisting of sections numbered 67-1800 through 67-1806, relating to electric vehicle rebate program, creation and funding. Report.
Shall the bill pass? Madam Clerk.
Delegate Hudson has voted. Delegate Williams-Graves has voted.
The clerk will please close the roll.
Ayes 55, nays 45, abstentions 0.
Ayes 55, nays 45, abstentions 0. The bill passes.
Page 13, House Bill 2027, a bill to amend and reenact Section 22.1, 253.13:3 of the Code of Virginia relating to standards of learning assessments.
Shall the bill pass? Madam Clerk.
Delegate Lopez has voted. Delegate Simon.
Aye.
Delegate Simon votes aye.
The clerk will please close the roll.
Ayes 99, nays 1, abstentions 0.
Ayes 99, nays 1, abstentions 0. The bill passes.
Page 14, House Bill 2040, a bill to amend and reenact Sections 60.2, 528.1, and other sections of the Code of Virginia relating to unemployment compensation, failure to respond, continuation of benefits, repayment of overpayments.
Shall the bill pass? Madam Clerk.
Delegate Guy has voted.
The clerk will please close the roll.
Ayes 57, nays 43, abstentions 0.
Ayes 57, nays 43, abstentions 0. The bill passes.
Page 15, House Bill 2053, a bill to direct the Department of Housing and Community Development to convene a stakeholder advisory group to evaluate the construction of internal, attached, and detached accessory dwelling units as a strategy to address the Commonwealth's growing demand for affordable and market-rate housing.
Shall the bill pass? Madam Clerk.
Delegate Lopez has voted. Delegate Simon.
Aye.
Delegate Simon votes aye.
The clerk will please close the roll.
Ayes 55, nays 45, abstentions 0.
Ayes 55, nays 45, abstentions 0. The bill passes.
Page 16, House Bill 2074, a bill to amend and reenact Section 2.2, 234, and other sections of the Code of Virginia relating to environmental justice, interagency working group.
Shall the bill pass? Madam Clerk.
Delegate Robinson has voted.
The clerk will please close the roll.
Ayes 56, nays 44, abstentions 0.
Ayes 56, nays 44, abstentions 0. The bill passes.
House Bill 2082, a bill to amend and reenact Sections 30396 and 30399 of the Code of Virginia relating to Virginia Redistricting Commission, transparency in the redistricting process.
Shall the bill pass? Madam Clerk.
Delegate Simon.
Madam Clerk, I think I need to, oh, there you go. I think I voted.
The clerk will please close the roll.
Ayes 55, nays 41, abstentions 4.
Ayes 55, nays 41, abstentions 4. The bill passes.
Page 17, House Bill 2132, a bill to amend the Code of Virginia by adding in Article 1 of Chapter 4 of Title 18.2, a section numbered 18.2, 37.1, and by adding in Article 4 of Chapter 4 of Title 18.2, a section numbered 18.2, 57.5, relating to homicides and assaults and bodily woundings, certain matters not to constitute defenses.
Shall the bill pass? Madam Clerk.
Delegate Hodge. All delegates have voted.
The clerk will please close the roll.
Ayes 58, nays 42, abstentions 0.
Ayes 58, nays 42, abstentions 0. The bill passes.
House Bill 2213, a bill to require the establishment of a work group to study the mining and processing of gold in the Commonwealth and to prohibit the issuance of certain mining permits. Report.
The delegate from Campbell, Delegate Ferris.
Madam Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, I have no problem at all with the study of gold mining and the processing of gold mining in Virginia. However, I do see a problem with putting a moratorium on gold mining. Even the bill itself talks about how many acres that we could mine until then, but what does that acreage entail? Is the surface of the mine that size? And then you can go down to the center of the earth. In fact, the old folks used to say we're going to dig to China. I mean, this does not make any sense, and I appreciate that we would continue to study, but not pass this bill at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Ferris. The delegate from Prince William, Delegate Guzman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Speaking to the bill.
Delegate Guzman, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. While working through this legislation, I've been constantly asked, why did I carry that bill? And I want to just make a few points. Number one, this bill is not just about one locality. Buckingham County is actually the canary in the coal mine. The bill has broad implications for Virginia, as the gold pirate belt extends from Fairfax County to Appomattox County. There has not been significant gold mining in Virginia for many years, and mining techniques have advanced. The substance involved in mining, cyanide, mercury, and arsenic, can find their way into the food and water supply. They can find their way into the James River and travel downstream and can lead to low birth weights for pregnant women. We have always promised that we will fight for clean water, and this is the water quality bill, Madam Speaker. We promised that we would fight for public health, and this is the public health bill. We promised that we would fight to our environment, and this is an environmental bill that could have a generational impact on how we are using our land and water. This bill just hits a pause button on new gold mining so that we can better study it. I would add this bill is a top priority for the League of Conservation voters. But yes, I do care also about the people of Buckingham County and the people of the historically African-American Union Hill. Environmental justice issues have been set aside for too long in Virginia, and we have seen these concerns overlooked in Buckingham County. So the issue is personal to me. We do want jobs in this Commonwealth, but we want to ensure that these jobs are going to value human beings and protect the public health of Virginia. And this bill is only putting a moratorium on those mining projects over 10 acres. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I hope it's a pleasure of this body to support this bill.
Shall the bill pass? Madam Clerk.
Delegate Adams, DM, has voted. Delegate Ferris has voted. Delegate Sickles has voted. Delegate Simon.
Aye.
Delegate Simon votes aye.
The clerk will please close the roll.
Ayes 55, nays 45, abstentions 0.
Ayes 55, nays 45, abstentions 0. The bill passes.
Page 18, House Bill 2221, a bill to amend and reenact Section 10.1, 1408.1, and other sections of the Code of Virginia relating to environmental permits, community and environmental justice outreach.
Shall the bill pass? Madam Clerk.
Delegate Webert.
The clerk will please close the roll.
Ayes 56, nays 43, abstentions 0.
Ayes 56, nays 43, abstentions 0. The bill passes.
House Bill 2263, a bill to amend and reenact Sections 2.2, 3705.7, and several other sections of the Code of Virginia relating to abolition of the death penalty.
The delegate from Caroline, Delegate Orrock.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Speaking to the bill.
Delegate Orrock, you have the floor.
Madam Speaker, I appreciate the comments of all the presenters yesterday, and I understand the deep feelings on both sides of this matter. Madam Speaker, members of the body, there's probably no single measure that has ever come before me in my 32-year tenure that has ever caused me such personal reflection and prayerful consideration. But I must say, Madam Speaker, I come down on the side that if life in prison truly meant life in prison, I think I would consider this measure in a totally different light and aspect. We have seen in just the past few months, this past year, that individuals sentenced to life in prison got out. We see just this session a number of measures where parole will become easier for individuals to potentially achieve. In the light of recent events, in the light of the fact that life in prison does not mean life in prison, and further, in light of the fact that I think all of us would agree there are certain individuals whose acts have deemed that they should never be able to be a threat to our fellow citizens in our society, they need to be removed from us, that I think this, in the light of the fact that parole will exist, life in prison does not mean it, then Madam Speaker, members of the body, I have to come down on the side of opposing this measure. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Delegate Orrock. The delegate from Norfolk, Delegate Jones.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Speaking to the bill.
Delegate Jones, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I think we had a really robust debate yesterday, but I want to put a couple of fine points on a couple of things. Obviously, I think everybody here knows that the United States is the only Western country to still employ the death penalty. The list of countries that does still use this include China, Iran, Saudi Arabia, places that I think even on this House floor people have excoriated for their practices before. That's an ignominious list, and that's not a list that I think that we need to be on in the United States, but not every state can make those decisions, and we have the opportunities to do that here in Virginia, and that's why I support this bill, and I commend Delegate Mullen for his work on this. I think Delegate Simon spoke yesterday about how this disproportionately affects communities of color. And I think what makes this place special is that we all bring our lived and personal experiences to this chamber to share with each other, to inform each other, to give light and give voices and give poignant memories to each of these things that we debate. And I just want to share a brief story with you all about my experience with the death penalty. I am the son of a woman who has given herself to the community. My mother was a longtime prosecutor, but in the middle of her career was a criminal defense attorney. And when I was about 8 years old, she was immersed in a case in Norfolk that has garnered a lot of notoriety, not just in this state, but across this country. And she was defending a man who was facing the death penalty. And this case became something in the Jones household that was discussed every single day. The banker's boxes on the dining room table in the living room. I spent countless hours in the office with my mother as she poured her heart and soul into this case to keep a man from getting killed by this state. And I asked her one day, I said, "Mom, what does this all mean?" And she said, "Jay, I'm trying to keep a man from getting lynched by the state. The death penalty is the direct descendant of lynching. It is state-sponsored racism, and we have an opportunity here to end this today. And so I want to encourage everybody to support this bill so that future mothers don't have to explain to their child who's 8 years old why this practice is still in place, why we're still perpetuating the black codes and Jim Crow. This is a historic moment for Virginia. This is a historic moment for all of us. So those of you who have changed your position on this, I thank you. To those advocates who have been there for this for a long, long time, I commend you. And I urge everybody to support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Jones. The delegate from Virginia Beach, Delegate Miyares.
Madam Speaker, permission to speak to the bill.
Delegate Miyares.
Madam Speaker, when I spoke to this body yesterday, quite frankly, it was the most difficult speech I've ever had to give because I decided as we were going through this debate to really go back into the case files and the facts of the case and try to give a voice to the victims, which again seemed to be missing in this entire discussion. And yesterday, the delegate from Fairfax rightly noted that I gave a pretty emotional speech yesterday, and I'm not going to disagree with them because quite frankly, reliving these cases and remembering the men and the women and the children who lost their lives at the hands of these truly depraved killers was an emotional journey. Remembering Stephanie Stipe and Stacy Reed and Trevor Gray and Ruba, 9-year-old Ruby and 4-year-old Ruby and 9-year-old Stella and the Harvey family, remembering 4-year-old Christina, those facts will always stick with me. But there are some things that have been said, other elements that quite frankly I can't allow go unchallenged, Madam Speaker. The death penalty has been around since antiquity, as we all know, but it's not about revenge. Death penalty is not about retribution. Ultimately, it's about justice. It's about justice to killers who torture and mock and kill their victims in the most terrifying, cruel, and horrific ways anyone could possibly imagine. Now, anybody who spent time in law school or philosophy class will recognize that this is an age-old question we're all dealing with right now, which is ultimately, what is justice? Hammurabi said it was an eye for an eye. We have the statue of Moses at the U.S. Supreme Court because the Torah was one of the first to articulate the idea of equal protection under the law. We all know the rule of law did not dawn in the Middle Ages, Madam Speaker. Napoleon, after all, created his own code of laws for France, and today in this Commonwealth, we live under laws that are established for the common good. That's what a Commonwealth is. But ultimately, what I've realized going through and looking back through all these cases is that the victims, Stacy Reed, can no longer participate in the common good because she was brutally murdered by a white supremacist. The Harvey family can no longer participate in our common good because their family was butchered in the sanctity of their home, all because they simply left their front door unlocked. Mary Baskerville and Purcell Tucker can no longer participate in our common good because they were simply in the wrong place at the wrong time and brutally murdered also in the sanctity of their own home. 2-year-old Shariah, she can't participate in our common good because she was murdered literally in her mother's arms alongside with her 4-year-old sister. And Shariah lost essentially 2 lives, the little young life she was living and the life she was going to live. She never got to experience love, the joy of graduating from high school, the joy of becoming a parent herself. All of that was taken from her. But guess what, Madam Speaker? As we've already seen in today's Virginia, men that get parole can't participate. They can live, they can experience joy, they can breathe free air, they can love their families, and they can also be loved in return. They can watch sunrises, they can watch season changes, they can enjoy Christmas and Thanksgiving dinners. Ultimately, they're alive, Madam Speaker. And now, some like Vincent Martin and Gregory Joyner are also free to walk among us. Madam Speaker, the death penalty in Virginia is itself dying. Our Commonwealth was once just behind Texas in the number of inmates put to death, and we've seen a complete change, which is violent crime has slowed. Fewer and fewer people are being sentenced to death. Now that happens when well north of 80% of violent crime is done by repeat offenders, and then when we passed laws back in the 1990s to keep these repeat offenders out of our streets, out of our neighborhoods, behind bars, and not surprisingly, crime drops. It's that simple. Now, we've seen this assembly vote on bill after bill that seems to be doing everything in their power to put criminals back on a path towards getting back on our streets. And now we have the death row in Virginia only has 2 residents. I talked about one of them, Anthony Juniper, yesterday. He's the one who took Shariah's life at age 2. It's a good thing we only have 2 people on death row, Madam Speaker. It shows that our criminal justice system has been working, keeping violent criminals behind bars with not committing more crimes. The other individual on death row right now is Thomas Porter. He was sentenced in 2005. Madam Speaker, since I like to give a voice to the voiceless, this is his victim. Stanley Reeves, Norfolk police officer, 33 years old. Porter shot and killed police officer Reeves, who had attempted to stop and question him. He shot him. Officer Reeves fell to the ground, and then Porter shot Reeves twice more on the ground, execution style. He's a cop killer. Your Honor, Madam Speaker, what we've realized ultimately is that human nature does not change. And no matter how low we manage to push the crime rate, there will always, at some point in the future, be someone who chooses depravity and evil over good, depravity over harmony, death over life. And when that day comes, our juries must have the ability to issue the ultimate punishment for the ultimate crime. The victims of these monsters call out to us across time and space, and they beg us not to forget them and to ensure that evil done to them is done to no one else. And they call out not for vengeance, but they're calling out for justice. Madam Speaker, these victims are begging not to be forgotten. That's what the death penalty is, Madam Speaker. It's not revenge. It's not eye for an eye. It's our society, our civilization, holding someone accountable for their actions and allowing our juries to decide about the ultimate punishment. It's not vengeance. It's justice. Justice for those who can no longer speak for themselves. Justice for people whose last moments were not surrounded by loved ones, but they were surrounded by terror. Whose last moments was to see oftentimes their very loved ones, their most precious things in the world, brutally and systematically ripped from them and murdered right in front of their eyes in an act of abject cruelty. Do not forget the victims. Vote against this bill. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The delegate from Alexandria, Delegate Levine.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Speaking to the measure.
Delegate Levine, you have the floor.
Madam Speaker, 25 years ago, my sister, Janet, was taken from her family. She was 33 years old. She was murdered by her husband. He left behind two children, my niece and nephew, aged 6 and 2. The children were left with my parents briefly to take care of them while the murderer cleaned up the crime scene for a month. Then he grabbed them, actually took my niece crying from my mother's arms, and ran with them first to Illinois and later to Mexico to be beyond the law. He taunted us. He laughed about the Tennessee law that said that domestic violence was not child abuse. He offered to sell visitation to my parents. He also ordered a hitman to kill both my parents. Having taken my sister, he tried to kill my parents too. He was returned to Tennessee. He is now serving a 56-year prison term, and I will consistently testify against him ever being paroled. Madam Speaker, I don't care if he dies. I'm fine with it. I'm fine if he dies. But you know what? This bill isn't about me. It's not about my sister. It's not about all the victims. It's about the fact that with the death penalty, the state may end up killing innocent people. We've heard that someone was 8 days away, a perfectly innocent man, and we almost killed him. And I know from the Innocent Project that a number of innocent people have been murdered by the state. Killing someone else doesn't bring Janet back to me. I've seen evil. I've looked it in the face. I know evil exists. There's no dispute about that. But taking an innocent person's life, that's evil, and it would be evil to be done by this General Assembly. I urge everyone to vote for this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Levine. The delegate from Alexandria, Delegate Herring.
Madam Speaker, I rise for a motion.
Delegate Herring, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move the pending question.
All those in favor of the pending question shall say aye.
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 Those opposed, the pending
Aye.
question is called. Shall the bill pass? Madam Clerk.
Delegate Austin. Delegate McQuinn.
The clerk will please close the roll.
Ayes 57, nays 41, abstentions 0.
Ayes 57, nays 41, abstentions 0. The bill passes.
Page 19, House Bill 2298, a bill to amend and reenact Section 29.1 of the Code of Virginia relating to muzzle-loading rifle and shotgun definitions.
Shall the bill pass? Madam Clerk.
Delegate Aird. Delegate Austin. Delegate Bourne. Delegate McQuinn has voted.
The clerk will please close the roll.
Ayes 74, nays 22, abstentions 0.
Ayes 74, nays 22, abstentions 0. The bill passes.
House Bill 2302, a bill to require that farmers market food and beverage sales be considered essential during a declared state of emergency.
Shall the bill pass? Madam Clerk.
Delegate Austin. Delegate Ayala. Delegate Brewer has voted.
Madam Speaker.
Oh, yes.
Delegate Austin votes nay.
Delegate Austin votes nay.
Oh, I'm sorry, Madam Speaker. I vote yea on this bill. I'm sorry. I'm offline. I apologize.
Delegate Austin votes aye.
Thank you.
The clerk will please close the roll.
Ayes 74, nays 26, abstentions 0.
Ayes 74, nays 26, abstentions 0. The bill passes.
Page 19 of the calendar, House Bill 2312, a bill to amend and reenact sections 2.2, 221, and many other sections of the Code of Virginia relating to marijuana, legalization of simple possession, penalties.
The delegate from Culpeper, Delegate Freitas.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Speaking to the bill.
Delegate Freitas, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This is one of those issues where I actually end up in disagreement with many of my colleagues with respect to what the government's proper role is. I never look at these bills as a question of whether or not it's an endorsement of using marijuana or not using marijuana.
personally, I don't think that's really the issue. I think the issue is whether or not the government will be using force in order to prevent somebody from doing something which isn't inherently hurting somebody else. And that's why I fully intended to be able to vote for a bill that would allow for legalization. Again, not as an endorsement of marijuana, but as putting government within its proper place.
Marijuana.
The problem that I see with this bill at this point is that the regulatory environment that has been set up, the restrictions that are being put in place, I feel as if we're going down a road where the government is going to have such control over a market that it's not going to be determined by people being able to freely compete within that market, but essentially one in which your connection to government officials is going to be the deciding factor on whether or not you actually get to participate. And I'm concerned about this sort of approach to regulatory structures going forward. And so I feel at this point I'm not simply voting on the underlying concept behind the bill, which I could actually support. I'm voting on a regulatory structure and a potential path forward in other areas as well that I think is going to be detrimental, not only to this particular potential industry, but one that can be used as a model for others as well. And for that reason, Madam Speaker, I cannot support the bill. However, I am hopeful that in conference, certain improvements could be made that could get us to a point where we're voting on a bill that is perhaps more simple with respect to its approach, and then there can be accompanying legislation in the future with respect to the regulatory requirements or how tax dollars are going to be spent or how we're going to determine who can actually appeal for a license. I realize some of that has to be present within this bill, Madam Speaker, but overall, the regulatory structure is simply not something I'm comfortable with. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Delegate Freitas. The delegate from Chesapeake, Delegate Lefwich.
Speaking to the bill, Madam Speaker.
Delegate Lefwich, you have the floor.
Madam Speaker, members of the body, I rise to speak in opposition to House Bill 2312. But before I state my position, let me first say my remarks are not intended to be critical of the patron, her intent, or her sincerity. And as with equal sincerity, however, I believe this bill will not create the desired results. And the focus of my remarks will relate to what I believe will be the impact legalization will have on the citizens of Virginia, in particular our youth. Colorado legalized marijuana in 2013. Hospitalizations per 100,000 residents linked to marijuana exposure are as follows. In 2001, from 2001 to 2009, there were 803 hospitalizations, and that's a period of 8 years. In 2014 to 2015, 1 year, those hospitalizations linked to marijuana rose to 2,696. Emergency room visits per 100,000 residents linked to marijuana. During a 3-year period, 2010 to 2013, there were 739. In about 1 3/4 years, from 2014 to roughly September 2015, there were 913. Excuse me, I lost my spot. Poison control calls involving marijuana exposure in Colorado. In 2012, there were 110. In 2014, 1 year after it was legalized, there were 223. The largest group to increase was in the 8-year and younger category. In 2012, there were 16, and by 2017, that had increased fourfold. Driver impairment involving marijuana. In Denver, that number doubled, as did in Aurora. Fatalities involving marijuana. 2013, there were 47. It increased every year. In 2017, it was 133. Madam Speaker, we are sentencing Virginians to a death penalty. Drug driving killing someone went from 1 in every 6.5 days to 1 in every 2.5 days. This rate doubled in Washington as well when it was legalized. What are the impacts on youth? In Colorado, past 30-day use runs 12% higher compared to the U.S. average, and the perception of great risk in using marijuana is 6% higher than the average. of the U.S. Let's look at some studies of how marijuana impacts mental health. The first study I'll mention is one conducted in 2019 by New York University Langone Health and New York University School of Medicine, which found problematic use among 12 to 17-year-olds was 25% higher compared to states without legal recreational use. And problematic use, also known as cannabis use disorder, is based upon DSM-4 criteria, which includes but is not limited to increased tolerance, repeated attempts to control use or quit, spending a lot of time using, social interpersonal problems due to use and giving up other activities to use. The 2002 study published in the British Medical Journal found people who used marijuana at age 15 were 4 times more likely to develop schizophrenia or related syndromes. 2017 National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine report concluded marijuana use is strongly associated with the development of psychosis, schizophrenia, and there is a strong evidence linking marijuana consumption to worsening symptoms of bipolar disorder and the heightened risk of suicide, depression, and social anxiety disorders. If you question these findings, I note the suicide rate in Colorado in 2012 involving marijuana was 11.8%. In 2016, the rate was 22%. Now, the next is an interesting study performed by Sven Andreasson, a Swedish doctor in 1980. The study was called the Longitudinal Study of Swedish Conscripts, which concluded marijuana contributes to psychosis and schizophrenia. In this study, military enlistment records were used, which included drug use history. These records were cross-referenced with National Health Service records to determine whether there was a greater likelihood of adolescents who use marijuana who then develop schizophrenia later in life, when the onset of this normally first occurs in teenage years. The study found that those who smoked marijuana more than 50 times as an adolescent were 6 times more likely to develop schizophrenia later in life. Again, this disorder normally first manifests itself as a teenager. Even after adjusting for family history of mental illness or existing symptoms, this cohort's schizophrenia rate was more than doubled if they only smoked marijuana 10 times while an adolescent. 1994 study, Comparative Etymology of Dependence on Tobacco, Alcohol, Controlled Substances, and Inhalants, found 1 in 6 kids who used marijuana just once eventually developed an addiction. 2012 article by Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences in a scientific journal, which is a peer-reviewed, multidisciplinary scientific journal, reported marijuana reduces IQ among those who start smoking before age 18. 2001 article in the British Journal of Psychiatry reported that use of marijuana by young adults in Holland and Portugal had increased at a rate of almost 300%. These countries are now retreating from their policies. In 2019, from the National Survey of Drug Use and Health, it concluded Colorado teen use increased for 5 years straight and is now 50% above the national average. There's some other interesting facts from this survey. Use during pregnancy may be associated with fetal growth restrictions, stillbirth, preterm birth, and neonatal intensive care unit admission. Use is linked to depression and suicide. Use in adolescence is associated with increased risk of psychotic disorders in adulthood and is linked with suicidal ideation or behavior. The risk of psychotic disorders increases with frequency of use, potency of marijuana product, and as the age at first use decreases. Use among adolescents is linked to a decline in IQ and is associated with educational dropout. Use has been linked to the development of drug use disorders, including alcohol, tobacco, and other illicit drugs. Marijuana intoxication, an important cause of MVAs, motor vehicle accidents, associated with injury and death, is increased. Association between states allowing medical marijuana and opioid overdose mortality reversed direction from 21% 1999 to 2010 to 23% in 1999 to 2017. Risk of subsequent prescription opioid misuse and other disorder was increased among people who reported marijuana use 5 years earlier. What about, and lastly, from the Rocky Mountain High Intensity Drug Trafficking Area Report, drug referrals for high school students testing positive for marijuana increased. What about organized crime? The following statistics relate to Colorado's Organized Crime and Control Act involving marijuana. 2012, there were 160 events under this Control Act. 2015, 294. 2016, 361. 2017, 534. We've heard that legalization will stop illegal trade of marijuana. Interdiction by other states. 30 states have seized marijuana sourced from Colorado. Federal land seizures have dramatically increased. California legalized marijuana, thinking it would end the illicit market. Governor Newsom announced in February 2019 he would, quote, boost the National Guard statewide counter-drug task force by redeploying up north to go after illegal cannabis farms, many of which are run by cartels. Why? After you purchase a license, set up a retail establishment, and pay tax, it will be profitable for someone else to undercut the price. Just look at the illicit cigarette market. Bootlegging cigarettes is a $1 billion industry, and people engage in it when there's only a 2 to 3% difference in tax amongst states. Now, Speaker, people have risked considerable prison time to produce and sell marijuana. Now that the penalties have been reduced, there's even less incentive to enter the illicit market. As I read House Bill 2312, it doesn't matter whether you import 1 ounce or an 18-wheeler fully loaded with pot into Virginia. It's only a Class 1 misdemeanor. Legalizing marijuana will not end the illegal activity and sales. Lastly, I've heard an argument that legalization will create revenue. For every dollar Colorado brings in regards to revenue, it spends 4.5 to mitigate the cost of legalization. What does this equate to in the cannabis use disorder treatment in Colorado? $31,448,000. Madam Speaker, I hope one day down the road I receive a call, and on the other end there's someone who says to me, Jay, you were wrong. However, I would derive no pleasure if that call never comes, for it would mean that on this day, in this moment, I failed to persuade my colleagues of the problems with which the Commonwealth will be confronted if this bill becomes law. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The delegate from Portsmouth, Delegate Scott.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Speaking to the bill.
Delegate Scott, you have the floor.
Madam Speaker, you would think that we are getting ready to prohibit the use of alcohol sales, which cause 400,000 deaths per year. You would think that we were getting ready to ban guns in this country, since they cause about 40,000 deaths per year. You would think that we were getting ready to go back and legalize and ban cigarettes and tobacco use, because it causes about 40,000 deaths per year. But we're talking about marijuana here, cannabis, and there's no research. Out of all of the research that the delegate spoke of earlier, that talks about the number of deaths caused. In fact, there are more deaths from legal pharmaceuticals, from side effects from using drugs that are legal and sold at your local CVS and Walgreens, that cause way more death than anything that marijuana or cannabis will do. This bill is a bill, first of all, it protects our youth. Young people are discouraged from using it. It is illegal for them to use it, and if some are caught, they are put into drug counseling. We do not want to criminalize it. We want them to be educated and be counseled. It is illegal for those under 21 to use it. So 18 to 21, they get the same impact and effect. And moreover, at the end of this day, I've listened to some of the arguments. This bill provides social equity and helps improve those communities who have been most impacted and harmed by the prohibition against cannabis. And I know some folks don't want to see these dollars go to these communities that have been harmed, because that is what it does. If you want to help marginalized communities, here is an opportunity. And just listening to some of the arguments, I know you may not see it, or some of you willfully are ignorant of it, but there is already a thriving $1.8 billion, B with a billion, B, $1.8 billion illicit marijuana market right now in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Here is our opportunity to make it safer, to regulate it, to get tax revenue from it, to help our schools. And what our idea is not only is to help benefit those who have been most harmed, but also fund those who are the poor children 3 and 4 years in early childhood education. This is an opportunity to invest in those communities that have been decimated by the so-called war on drugs, and to give us an economic leg up. When we talk about criminal justice reform, as I often do, that seems to be an easy, low-hanging fruit for some people to support. But when we start talking about economic empowerment that will come from the legalization of cannabis, then folks get gun-shy. I'm asking folks to support this bill, as I will. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Delegate Scott. The delegate from Enrico, Delegate McGuire.
Madam Chair, Madam Speaker, speaking to the bill.
Delegate McGuire, you have the floor.
You know, I've been in politics just over 3 years now. All of us have knocked a lot of doors. I've knocked on 7 doors where a mother or father cried with me and prayed with me because their 18, 19, 20-year-old son or daughter overdosed and died. And all 7 of them said it started with a gateway drug, marijuana. And I've also looked at some of the studies and reports and the science out of Colorado, and vehicle-related deaths have gone up quite a bit. Employers in my district said they don't want to hire people that do marijuana because they just lose their motivation to do anything. Yesterday, when I talked to sheriffs across my district, and they said that because of the way we're doing this, the black market is going to just grow substantially in Virginia, which is what happened in Colorado. They thought legalizing marijuana in Colorado would stifle the black market, but it had the opposite effect, and that's what's going to happen in Virginia. So for that reason and more, I urge the body to vote no on this bill.
The delegate from Enrico, Delegate Van Valkenburg.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, speaking to the bill.
Delegate Van Valkenburg, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just want to kind of address, I think one of the things that's gotten lost maybe in this conversation is the component of public health that's in this bill. You know, we heard the delegate from Chesapeake lay out his concerns, and I will be honest and share that I have concerns around people using it too. I've taught kids for 16 years now, and it's, drug use is not a good thing. And so I share his concerns, but I want to emphasize the public health components that are really a huge pillar to this bill and that give me a lot of confidence in this moving forward. So I'm going to hit a couple points and be brief. One is that the Public Health Advisory Board that's created under this bill, that is part of the new board that we are creating to regulate cannabis, has explicit veto power over regulations that are promulgated that deal with public health. And I think that's an incredibly important thing to kind of sit with for a minute. That means that doctors and scientists and people who are concerned with public health are going to have the final say over the sanitary conditions of dispensaries, over THC content, over advertising regulations, so that we're ensuring that public health comes first and commerce comes second. Secondly, the advertising regulations that are in this bill are top-notch, are better than most states, and hit what public health experts think are necessary. And within that are a whole bunch of limitations as it relates to schools, when you can advertise, and these types of things. The third thing I'll note is that we've put caps on all the different licenses, which Delegate Freitas probably does not like, but which I think helps the concern over the cannabis industry spreading into all parts of our community. It's not going to be allowed to do that. And so I think we have some really strong parts in here when it relates to public health. And to the delegates from Portsmouth's comments, we know this is here, this is an industry, it's an illegal industry, and the better we can ensure that we are addressing the public health issues of Virginians, the better our children's health is going to be. And so for those reasons, I would hope that you would vote yes on this bill. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Delegate Van Valkenburg. The delegate from Richmond City, Delegate McQuinn.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise for a motion.
Delegate McQuinn, you have the floor.
Madam Speaker, I ask that we move the pending question.
All those in favor of Delegate McQuinn's motion to move the pending question shall say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, the pending question is called. Shall the bill pass? Madam Clerk.
Delegate Carr. has voted. Delegate Knight.
The clerk will please close the roll.
Ayes 55, nays 42, abstentions 2.
Ayes 55, nays 42, abstentions 2. The bill passes.
Page 21 of the calendar, House Bill 2321, a bill to amend and reenact Section 2.2, 200, and other sections of the Code of Virginia relating to governor's secretaries, Secretary of Labor created.
Shall the bill pass?
Mike voted for, duty abstain. What a coin.
Can you please mute everybody? Madam Clerk.
Delegate Hodges. Delegate Simon.
The clerk will please close.
Aye.
Delegate Simon votes aye.
The clerk will please close the roll.
Ayes 55, nays 44, abstentions 0.
Ayes 55, nays 44, abstentions 0. The bill passes.
Page 22 of the calendar, House Bill 2330, a bill to amend and reenact Sections 56,576 and 56,585.6 of the Code of Virginia relating to electric utilities, percentage of income payment program.
Shall the bill pass? Madam Clerk.
Everyone has voted.
The clerk will please close the roll.
Ayes 54, nays 46, abstentions 0.
Ayes 54, nays 46, abstentions 0. The bill passes.
House Bill 2331, a bill to amend and reenact Sections 3.2, 4212, and other sections of the Code of Virginia relating to elimination of mandatory minimum sentences, modification of sentence to mandatory minimum term of confinement for felony offenses.
The delegate from Albemarle, Delegate Bell.
Madam Speaker, I rise to speak to the bill.
Delegate Bell, you have the floor.
As members of the body, I'd like to underline what's in this measure so nobody can say later they didn't know what they were voting for. This is the bill from the delegate from Newport News that would eliminate a number of mandatory minimum sentences in the Code of Virginia, and I want to focus on just a few. If this bill were to pass, it would eliminate the current mandatory minimum sentence for large traffickers, those who traffic in 5 kilograms or more of heroin or 10 kilograms or more of cocaine. It would also eliminate the mandatory minimum the code currently has for those who deal drugs, and I mean hard drugs, the harder drugs, the methamphetamine, the cocaine, the heroin, to kids, where the person they sell to is under the age of 18. It would eliminate the mandatory minimum sentence for those who cause a person under the age of 18 to assist them in selling these drugs. It would eliminate the mandatory minimum sentence for those who sell at public or private elementary schools, or at high schools, or on school buses, or on school bus stops where it is a second or subsequent offense. And to underline that, that's for someone who was already charged with that, got into whatever sentence he got, jail, prison, got out, and went back to that school or that school bus stop, or the school bus, and sold the drugs again. Ladies and gentlemen, we spend billions of dollars, with a B, billions of dollars trying to address the ravages of drug addiction. We have people that have trouble with this for their entire lives. And when you speak with them, and I hope that all of you have, I certainly have, I think to a man or woman, they say, I wish I hadn't gotten started. I wish I'd known now what I didn't know then. I was young and stupid. I was, whatever the age is, 14, 15, 16, and younger sometimes. When I took that made the decision to try it for the first time, and now I have this addiction and it will trouble me for my entire life. Ladies and gentlemen, those drugs don't fall off of a truck. They are brought in by, in this case, some of the people who traffic in major quantities, or They are given, sold, distributed to them by some of these very people that this bill would address. I hope we can conclude it's not too much to say, as a body, we believe that if you deal drugs to someone who's underage, we believe there is a minimum sentence. We think you should not be able to do that and not serve a sentence in Virginia. We could argue about how long. The current bill says 5 years. The current law says 5 years. Maybe the right answer is 10. Maybe it's 3. That would be an argument to have, but to take it away altogether and say, we can't conclude as a group that you should serve 1 day. 1 day for selling these hard drugs to school kids, for repeatedly selling them at schools, for trafficking in 5 kilograms of heroin or 10 kilograms of cocaine. If we can't conclude that that person should serve at least 1 day, I think we're making a mistake. So I hope you will vote against this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Bell. The delegate from Newport News, Delegate Mullen.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, speaking to the bill.
Delegate Mullen, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I appreciate the words from the delegate from Albemarle. They certainly sound like a prosecutor. I know because I am one. And I can tell you that these laws don't work. No one here is trying to say that you should get away with selling drugs to children or anything else of the sort. Those will remain illegal. What we are saying is that we should not substitute our judgment for those of judges. No one in this body is a judge. And God willing, hopefully none of us will be. But I can tell you that the last 40 years of the war on drugs have been a failure. We have criminalized mental health, we have criminalized addiction, and what we have ended up with is one of the largest incarceration rates in the world. I can tell you this, it takes, from all studies that I've heard of, up to 17 times to be able to break an opioid addiction, and that's when you're trying. That is tough. But you know what's not going to help that? Prison. So what this bill does is says that we can have a different way, that we can start providing resources, that we can start helping these individuals who are struggling with addiction. Those who commit crimes will still be punished, but they will be punished according to a jury and judge of their peers, and not by the arbitrary decisions of this body. And so I hope it will be the pleasure of this body to pass the bill.
Thank you, Delegate Mullen. The delegate from Arlington, Delegate Lopez.
Madam Speaker, I have a motion.
Delegate Lopez.
I move the pending question, Madam Speaker.
All those in favor of Delegate Lopez's motion to move the pending question shall say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the pending question is called. Shall the bill pass? Madam Clerk.
Madam Speaker, everyone has voted.
The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 58, nays 42, abstentions 0.
Ayes 58, nays 42, abstentions 0. The bill passes.
Page 23, House Bill 2104, a bill to amend and reenact Section 33.2, 613 of the Code of Virginia and other sections of the Code relating to repeal of the Virginia Highway Corporation Act of 1988, roadways operating under the Highway Corporation Act of 1988 to operate under the Public-Private Transportation Act of 1995.
Shall the bill pass? Madam Clerk.
Delegate Ferris.
Clerk will please close the roll.
Ayes 90, nays 9, abstentions 1.
Ayes 90, nays 9, abstentions 1. The bill passes.
Returning to page 2 of the calendar, House Bill 2078 was moved from the uncontested calendar. House Bill 2078, a bill to amend and reenact Sections 3.2, 4112, and other sections of the Code of Virginia relating to industrial hemp, emergency.
The delegate from Richmond City, Delegate Adams.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, speaking to the bill.
Delegate Adams, you have the floor.
I don't typically like to speak on the floor, and I apologize for bringing this today instead of yesterday. You know, it was mentioned that this is a rope, not dope bill, and I just want to make sure that people understand what they're voting on. This bill is a hemp bill, and not all hemp is free of a high. In fact, there is a Delta 8, which is currently being sold. It is currently being marketed in the same sections as CBD, and it in fact will get you very high. And that's not my business. If people, if we legalize marijuana, I think that's great, and it's people's choice. But what is my business is patients, and I very much see the power and value of medical cannabis. But that again is a conscious choice. And what worries me about this bill is that there is no transparency in marketing. There is no transparency in the reality that Delta 8 can get you very high. And so you may think that you're taking CBD, but really you're taking a psychogenic product derived from hemp that is legal. And as I further looked into the bill, it concerns me that there are no age limitations. There is nothing about testing. There are no real guardrails for hemp that make it clear that people can see very definitely the ramifications of purchasing those products. And so I just feel like the bill isn't quite ready yet. I think these things could be fixed, but I wanted to mention my concerns because I see that there's an emergency clause, and that just worries me that we're rushing into something that's not fully formulated. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Delegate Adams. The delegate from Danville, Delegate Marshall.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, speak to the bill.
Delegate Marshall, you have the floor.
Madam Speaker, members of the House, the reason the emergency clause is on the bill is so that the growers, again, ag is the #1 industry in the state of Virginia, so that they can, have the benefits of this bill in this growing season. This bill is brought to you not by me, but by VDAX. This is an administration bill. The amendments are brought to you by VDAX, and so if you like the bill, I would ask you to vote for it. If you don't like the idea, then we can work on this when we get to the Senate and try to change some of the things. But again, bill is brought to you by the administration. I ask you to vote for the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Marshall. Shall the bill pass? Madam Clerk.
Delegate Levine has voted.
The clerk will please close the roll.
Ayes 77, nays 22, abstentions 1.
Ayes 77, nays 22, abstentions 1. The bill passes.
Madam Speaker,
Yes, the delegate from Fairfax, Delegate Simon.
parliamentary inquiry.
Yes, Delegate Simon.
I thought that bill had an emergency clause on it, and
You are correct. You are correct. So the bill fails. Thank you, Delegate Simon.
Madam Speaker.
Yes, who is speaking?
Madam Speaker,
Marshall.
Delegate from Danville, Delegate Marshall.
Yeah, I haven't voted on the prevailing side where we didn't pass the House bill. I have an amendment that I want to offer.
Madam Speaker,
Yes, Delegate from Shenandoah, Delegate Gilbert.
I would gently suggest that perhaps a different delegate needs to make that motion if they are willing.
Thank you, Delegate Gilbert.
Madam Speaker.
Yes, delegate from Fairfax, Delegate Simon.
Madam Speaker, having voted on the prevailing side by which we failed to pass House Bill 2078, I move that we reconsider that vote.
Delegate Simon moves, having voted on the prevailing side of HB 2078 with the bill failed, wishes to reconsider. All those in favor shall say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Those opposed, 2078 is before us.
Madam Speaker, that bill go by temporarily.
All those in favor of 2078 going by temporarily shall say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, 2078 goes by temporarily. The delegate from Alexandria, Delegate Herring.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise for a motion.
Delegate Herring, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Actually, it'll be two motions, but first, having voted on the prevailing slide on which we passed HB 2332 on page 7, I move that we reconsider the vote.
Delegate Herring moves, having voted on the prevailing side, HB 2332 on page 7, that we reconsider that vote. As many as favor the motion will say aye.
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 Those opposed, HB 2332 is before us. We all ready? Shall the bill pass? The House will be at ease. The House will please come to order. So HB 2332 on page 7. Shall the bill pass? Madam Clerk.
Delegate Campbell, JL. Delegate Converse Fowler. Delegate Gilbert.
Aye.
Delegate Gilbert votes aye. Delegate Hope. Delegate Orrock.
The clerk will please close the roll.
Ayes 65, nays 32, abstentions 0.
Ayes 65, nays 32, abstention 0. The bill passes. The delegate from Fairfax, Delegate Simon.
Madam Speaker, parliamentary inquiry.
Delegate Simon, you have the floor.
We took Delegate Marshall's bill by temporarily. Is that, are we at the end of the calendar? Is that now before us?
That you are correct. HB 2078, I believe, is before us.
Madam Speaker, speaking to the bill.
Delegate Simon, you have the floor.
Madam Speaker, members of the House, I had initially voted no, having listened carefully to the concerns raised by the delegate from, I think, in Michael, Richmond City, Delegate Adams. I have been, since reconsidering no, I've heard from the Secretary of Agriculture, who says that this is a very important bill and it needs to move forward, and expressed a sincere willingness and commitment to work with Delegate Adams to discuss her concerns and see if it's possible to address them as this moves over to the Senate. And so for that reason, Madam Speaker, I'm going to be flipping my no to a yes. I think my original intent in voting no in support of Delegate Adams was to send a signal to the administration and the folks in the Senate that although this bill had been on the uncontested docket, we'd like to get some more work. And so I think we certainly have their attention now. And so that mission is accomplished. And again, I will be voting yes, and I encourage other members to vote yes on this bill.
Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Delegate Simon. The delegate from Shenandoah, Delegate Gilbert.
Madam Speaker, I have a floor amendment.
I don't believe we can do floor amendments now. Yep.
I was just making sure it was withdrawn.
Oh, okay.
And before we move on to the next bill, Madam Speaker, I was in transit. Is it too late for me to correct my vote on the last bill? I thought we were on this bill. I intended to vote nay when I voted aye on the last bill. I would respectfully ask to correct that at this point if possible.
Madam Speaker?
Yes, the delegate from Alexandria, Delegate Herring.
Madam Speaker, having voted on the prevailing side in which
Actually,
we passed.
wait. The House, I don't believe we can do that. The House will be at ease.
Oh, okay.
It's already been reconsidered.
Delegate Gilbert, unfortunately, that had already been reconsidered. So, but you can send a gray sheet, your vote, and make sure the clerks know for 2332.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you.
Madam
Okay,
Speaker.
delegate from Danville, Delegate Marshall.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I submitted also an amendment, and I'd like to withdraw that. And I'd also like to thank my good friend, Delegate Simon, for his words of encouragement.
Thank you, Delegate Marshall. Okay, we are HB 2078. Shall the bill pass? Madam Clerk.
Delegate Avoli.
Yes.
Delegate Avoli votes aye. Delegate Campbell, JL. Delegate Campbell Delegate McGuire. Delegate McNamara.
The clerk will please close the roll.
Ayes 87, nays 10, abstentions 2.
Ayes 87, nays 10, abstentions 2. The bill passes.
Madam Speaker, I believe that completes the calendar.
Per House Rule 51, the House has returned to morning hour. Does the clerk have any additional announcements or communications?
Yes, Madam Speaker, I have a few announcements, a few important announcements about the schedule for the next few days. First, on Sunday, February 7th, there will be a pro forma floor session at noon, Sunday at noon, and that's to get Senate bills on first reading. And then at 1 o'clock, the Appropriations Committee has its normal committee meeting, and it will also start to carry over bills, Senate bills, to the special session. On Monday, February 8th, all committees, except for Appropriations, all committees will meet Monday, February 8th. They will meet in these following blocks, and the purpose will be to continue legislation from the regular session to the special session. That's the only business that will be before these committees on Monday. 7 a.m., Education Committee, Privileges and Elections Committee, and Finance Committee. At 7 a.m., Education, Privileges and Elections, and Finance. At 9 a.m., Courts, Agriculture, Chesapeake and Natural Resources, General Laws, and Communications, Technology, and Innovation. So that's 9 a.m., Courts, Agriculture, Chesapeake and Natural Resources, General Laws, and Communications, Technology, and Innovation. 11 o'clock, County, Cities, and Towns, Public Safety, and Rules. That's County, Cities, and Towns, Public Safety, and Rules. And then at 1 o'clock, Health, Welfare, and Institutions, Labor and Commerce, and Transportation. And these groupings were because to create as few conflicts as possible. Then Monday, after all the committees have met, there will be a floor session at 3:30, after which, at the end of which, we will adjourn sine die. On Tuesday, the only meeting on Tuesday will be a joint House and Senate courts meeting to hear judge nominations. And that's tentatively set at 2 o'clock on Tuesday, but please watch for any announcements about that time. And then the special session will convene on Wednesday, February 10th, and we will announce that time on Monday, during the floor session on Monday afternoon. So the special session will convene Wednesday, February 10th. I'll be sending out, right after this meeting, a memo to all delegates that details this schedule and the committee schedule for the special session as well. Madam Speaker, I believe that completes my announcements.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The delegate from Enrico, Delegate Van Valkenburg.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, rise for a point of personal privilege.
Delegate Van Valkenburg, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, members of the body, it is time for kids to have access to in-person learning. In all three of my jobs, parent, teacher, legislator, I have become increasingly frustrated, I think as many of you have, and as many of our parents in our communities have, about the fact that they have not been able to come back. Now, back in November, as we were preparing for this session, I didn't think we'd be in this situation. You know, it seemed like we were on the right track. And then events happened. There was a COVID spike. Some localities had more back and forth between different groups in their communities than others. The vaccine rollout happened so that we could get teachers' rollouts. But now it is time. And to that end, I am glad to see that the governor is calling on schools to open their doors on by March 15th. But to that end, also, we need to make sure that we have an in-person school in the fall as well. And I will be introducing a substitute to the Senate's proposal that is being sent on its way to ensure that we are open but that we do so in a way that is thoughtful, that allows for us to take science and the contingency of the moment into account, that respects individual communities and their different needs, and one that is specifically tailored to this moment. And just for 1 second, I want to talk about why that substitute is needed. The bill that is heading over to us, the bill from the Senate, is actually a far-reaching bill that would permanently change education policy in the Commonwealth and is not directly tailored to this moment, but is instead a policy that would go into effect in perpetuity, one that would make it so that schools could not account for public health crises when they happen, and one that would open Pandora's box on virtual schooling. The bill that I'm putting in will ensure that we have in-person opportunities, but that folks can take science into account, can take individuals into account, and can take communities into account. Having said that, it is time we get kids back. It is time we get schools up and running. So I'm glad the governor did what he did, and that is why I'll be introducing this substitute in the coming weeks. Thank you, Madam Speaker and members of the body.
Thank you, Delegate Van Valkenburg. The delegate from Newport News, Delegate Simons.
Madam Speaker, I rise for an announcement.
Delegate Simons, you have the floor.
I just wanted to remind everyone that we have an email from Delegate Dolores McQuinn about the Capitol Square Basketball Classic. And I just want to remind you about that. This weekend would be a great time to donate. And I just donated 100 smackaroos, and I want to challenge all of my fellow delegates to do the same if you're able this weekend. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Delegate Simons. The delegate from Richmond City, Delegate Bourne.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise for a point of personal privilege.
Delegate Bourne, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'll be brief because I've been around long enough to know that points of personal privilege are generally frowned upon on Fridays. However, I felt compelled. I am not as bullish on the return to in-person school as my friend from Henrico is. Madam Speaker, I'm not saying that the plans won't work because I believe our superintendents, our school boards, our teachers, all of our school employees want to be back in the schools with their students. But what I will say, Madam Speaker, and I will readily admit that I have not had an opportunity to rewatch the press conference as we were in session. I have sent some text to the governor's office for more information. But what I will say is that for a school division like Richmond, who has what have been described, and I would agree, as atrocious facility issues, where the HVAC units, the air handlers, all of those sorts of things that contribute to a school division's ability to have students, teachers, and staff in them safely, concern me greatly. And so, Madam Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, I believe that we hopefully will still be in the posture of returning children, returning teachers, returning staff, returning parents to schools when it is safe. And only then should we do that. Madam Speaker, I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Delegate Warren. The delegate from Alexandria, Leader Herring.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move that when the House adjourns today, it adjourn to reconvene at noon Sunday, February 7th, 2021.
The delegate from Alexandria, Delegate Herring, moves that when the House adjourned today, it adjourn to reconvene Sunday at noon. As many as favor the motion will say aye.
Aye.
As many as opposed, the motion is agreed to. The delegate from Alexandria.
Madam Speaker, I move that the House do now adjourn.
The delegate from Alexandria, Leader Herring, moves that the House do now adjourn. As many as favor the motion will say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, the motion is agreed to. The House stands adjourned until Sunday, February 7th at noon.